Welcome to The Nation. I'm Jessy Chahal. Today we look at Malaysia's efforts to cut carbon emissions and move towards a cleaner, more sustainable future. And joining us to share insights on the challenges and opportunities ahead is ONNO PFEIFFER, the COO and co-founder of Diolko. Welcome, ONNO. It's good to have you with us. And
thank you for having me.
What an interesting conversation that's ahead of us in terms of the last mile, and we'll really get into that. But let's look at traffic congestion in Malaysia, more so in city centres. In terms of its inconvenience, it costs the country an estimated 20 billion ringgit annually to go around that. Now, beyond that, congestion also drives up emissions, which is, of course, from a sustainability point of view, with ESG as well as one of the focus areas. This is an issue. From your perspective, how closely are these two issues linked in terms of congestion and carbon emission?
Yeah, fair question. It's absolutely related. So one thing is the economic burden on the company and on the country. But it's also a climate issue and also quality of life issue. So if you talk about breathable air and things like that. The big impact with e-commerce has been growing massively in Malaysia. People are buying more things, and the usual answer is to put more vehicles on the road. So that means that equals to more congestion and that causes more carbon emissions. So that's just only talking about direct emissions. There's also the indirect emissions, is from the inefficiencies, where companies are putting more vehicles on the roads as spare capacity just to manage the congestion. So it's both direct and indirect emissions that's impacting.
Right, those two things being the problem. What are some of the solutions around this, and where is Malaysia from that point on? Where are we positioned?
Yeah, if you look at logistics, we've always been shipping boxes from A to B in the same way. So it's really about looking at our existing models and innovating there. So one thing that we do at Diolko is looking at traditional logistics, so last mile delivery. So when we pick up packages from warehouses and delivering them to consumers or to companies, to do that in a different way. So what we're doing today is using public infrastructure, so assets that are already there, using them in a smarter way. So it's repurposing and being more efficient with what we do today.
So walk us through that exact process when you say being smarter and being more efficient and using assets that are already there. What does that mean?
Yeah. So in today's world, if you look at most companies, they use kind of the hub and spoke model. So you have warehouses outside of the city center. They have a fleet that pick up the goods. They do delivery routes throughout the city. What that means is that those vehicles are empty half of the time. So instead of sticking to that traditional model, what we're doing is we're using public transport to pick up.
By that you mean LRT, MRT?
So right now we're
buses.
using the LRT network, but we're planning to expand to other networks as well. So in essence, the rail network to pick up goods from warehouses, bring to the closed station, and then bring as close as possible to the final recipient and do the delivery from there. So what we're effectively doing is localizing delivery. So our riders, they stay around the station area. So it's a 5-10 kilometer radius instead of driving back and forth to the warehouse outside the city. So it's just about being smarter, using the assets that are already there.
So being smarter and being more efficient, what are some of the figures or improvements you've seen around implementing such a system?
So if we look at, we started last year, we started a pilot with Prasarana on the LRT network with only 3 locations. During the first 6 months, we were able already to reduce carbon emissions by 70%, so 70%, with a network that was not covering the full Klang Valley yet. So as we expand the network and open up more stations, we expect to actually increase the carbon emission savings. Similarly, we're able to reduce the time that we spend on the road by almost 40%, which means that's time less spent in traffic jams, filling up the roads. It's just being more efficient in a way compared to the traditional way of shipping.
We could all do with less traffic on the roads. Malaysia has set an ambitious goal for achieving net zero carbon by the year 2050. We're not too far away from that, 2 decades plus ahead. Now, in your view, how much can urban logistics really contribute towards reaching that target, and what is the big impact if we get it right and we get it right on time?
Yeah. It's a universal problem. So this is not Malaysia, it's everywhere, but it doesn't make it less urgent. So even in Malaysia, 2030, 2040, 2050, the different targets that the government and the companies have, it seems like a lot of time, but time flies by really quickly. So if we don't act now, we will have to catch up later on. So that means being more efficient in terms of delivery. And if you look at logistics, it's here to stay. People still want to have goods. You can't get rid of logistics. It is responsible for a quarter of the emissions if you look at the transportation sector. So how can we make that more efficient and then reduce the overall emissions of Malaysia?
Speaking of that sector, what other initiatives are being done to ensure that the ESG agenda is onboarded by companies, MNCs, and so on?
Yeah, so one of the big changes as well, what happened is that all the publicly traded companies in Malaysia, they now need to do ESG reporting. So they need to be transparent on how much they're emitting. So that will drive a lot of the larger companies to think differently about how they emit and what their role is within Malaysia. But other initiatives, if you look at EV, electrical vehicle technology, it's definitely growing, but it also requires infrastructure investment. So it's both a private and public effort that will be need to make, and it's really about collaborating. So this the kind of public-private partnership is key.
Well, the time to act is now. There has to be plans that are put into place and some are already in motion. The fact that companies, organizations need to be ESG ready. What do you have to say about the ESG readiness? And that's just no longer about speed or efficiency. It's also about compliance, right?
Yes.
Where are companies that are embedded here in Malaysia? Where are they at this point of time? And do you see sort of a gap that really needs to be bridged?
Yeah. So if you look at other markets, so Malaysia right now, ESG reporting is the first step. So transparency is a key part, and Malaysia made a really good step forward in that front. Once the transparency is there, then actually the policies can be made to act on that. What you see in other markets already is taking to the next step. For example, look at voluntary carbon market. So that's about emissions trading, or to even take a step further is carbon tax. So that's where companies have a financial benefit from savings their emissions. So that's a step that cannot be done in one, as a change that cannot be done in one step. It requires several steps, and Malaysia took a first step, and this is a journey that we need to be on.
And of course, the initiative or the plan with this system, or the last mile system, is to ensure that it can really go to every nook and corner of the country. What is that plan that is already perhaps in place as well to connect the other cities like Johor and Penang that are really busy cities as well?
Yes. So the nice thing with Klang Valley is there's an extensive network. So today we work with LRT. It's fantastic infrastructure for both for commuters and for parcels. We'll expand to the other operators. That's our intention. We're already in discussion with the other operators. If you're talking about connecting to other cities, we can apply the same model. So either it's by using the train, so for example the KTM network to connect cities, and build a similar network in those cities, or it's also about reusing other city infrastructures, be it empty real estate. So there's a lot of shops that are not being used, so like using storage that's using for a different purpose. But the idea is to always use underutilized city infrastructure, whether it's in Klang Valley or in other cities. So it's part about connecting all that and saving emissions if you look at the whole supply chain from beginning to end.
What has been the level of interest when you've approached organizations or MNCs, GLCs? What has been their feedback, and at the first look, are they excited?
Absolutely. So everybody wants green. We started 4 or 5 years ago. Even then, a lot of companies were looking for a green, sustainable solution, but there was nothing on the market. We started operating last year, and companies were still waiting for a solution like this. So there's definitely demand for that. The big difference as well, what we notice is that primarily is from bigger international brands, because Scope 3 emissions are now required as well in markets like Europe and the US. So that means that even companies that have a headquarter outside of Malaysia, they do care about what's happening in Malaysia, which was quite different from the past. So all those companies that have to report, they need to be aware of what's going into other markets around the world.
But you say even consumers or the end user, or i.e. the recipient,
yeah.
Are also very green excited or green minded in that aspect?
Absolutely, everybody wants green. Obviously, the big problem is if you have to pay R1 more on delivery, a lot of people might be dissuaded. But what we're trying to do is make sustainability accessible. So there's been several studies in terms of buying behavior, and if you give consumers the choice between a standard product, a non-sustainable product, and sustainable product, they will choose sustainable, as long as it's a cost as effectively the same price, if it's the same service level in terms of delivery times, and as long as there's enough transparency on what the impact is. If consumers don't know how much of a difference they can make in choosing a sustainable product and a non-sustainable product, they won't be able to make that decision. But if you give consumers the choice, they will typically choose the more sustainable solution.
But there's also something to be said there in terms of cost versus an interest to take up an initiative, in this case, the whole ESG or sustainability efforts. Do you foresee the cost going down in the near future with more plans like Diolko already on the market?
Absolutely, it has to. Sustainability needs to be affordable. If you charge double the price as a normal product, nobody will do it, of course. But what we've noticed in case of our model is that 40% of the cost is the last mile delivery driver. So that's the person on the bike or in the van on the road bringing it to the doorstep. So if we can do that more efficiently, we can actually reduce our costs, and that way, that's the way how we make this sustainable product more accessible, by being more efficient and reducing our overall costs.
We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more discussion right here on ESG and sustainability, as well as last mile delivery. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Nation. I'm in conversation with ONNO PFEIFFER, COO and co-founder of Diolko. It is a last mile delivery organization or system that is implemented to help alleviate traffic congestion, to cut carbon emissions and so on, all in the realm of ESG. And of course, sustainability is something that the nation has focused on as we move forward. Now, when we look at other cities around the world, ONNO, in terms of busy cities like London and Paris and New York and New Delhi and so on and so forth, they're also experimenting with this sort of thing in terms of trying to cut emissions. They're also looking at banning older vehicles and also to encourage the last mile. How does Diolko's rail-based system actually work in practice in terms of the parcel drop-off to the final handover? You walked us through a little bit there, but give us an example. For example, I've ordered something from one of the very popular fashion clothing sites online.
Yeah. Looking at other cities, I think if you look at cities and how they've been designed, they were designed when there were not many vehicles out there. So if you look at the road network, it's in all the old cities, it's not been designed for the amount of traffic that we have today.
Right.
So inherently, all the cities are struggling with the same thing, and that's why you see some cities having these kind of measures where they block certain traffic during certain hours just to alleviate the road network. So by using the public transport network, we're actually using the infrastructure that's already there today and just using it in a different way. And we can actually take vehicles off the road and using the rail transport instead. So what that means effectively is that if you order something for one of our customer websites, so L'Oréal is one of our customers, yeah. If you order through their brand website, you place an order, we receive an order to pick up that package from a warehouse in Shah Alam. So we go there, we pick it up with an electrical vehicle, we bring it to the closest station that we operate. That's where we do the sorting, we consolidate it, and we put it onto our own proprietary trolley that's been approved by APAD. To move those packages on board of the LRT network. So we bring those packages as close as possible to the final recipient, and from there we hand it over to our e-bike or e-van, depending on the size of the package, and they deliver it from the station to your home or to your office, depending on where you're located.
And when they're on the train, for example, or the LRT, is this done at peak hours or after hours? When is it done? Because earlier you brought up the point of the fact that these vehicles are not being used.
Yeah. So it's during off-peak hours because we have a kind of a unique relationship with Prasarana. They're really our partner. It's not that we just use any of the vehicles. We have a close relationship with them. We have very clear SOPs, and the key thing for us is that we don't want to impact the commuter journey or the safety or the comfort. So what we do is we operate during our off-peak hours, and at this moment we operate during the night because then we don't impact the regular commuters that need to go to work, for example. So it's really using those assets for multiple purposes, and that can be done safely and in an efficient manner.
It's efficient, it's sustainable, it's green, it's saving Earth. Why are we not seeing more players in this space? Is it a cost issue, an infrastructure issue?
It's a big chunk is infrastructure legacy. So if you have a fleet of a couple of thousand vehicles, converting them to electrical fleet, it's a massive financial undertaking to restructure your fleet. Also, the infrastructure is not there, so a lot of companies are dealing with legacy. So the way they were set up worked really well in the past, but once we start moving towards a more green or sustainable future, companies need to adapt. And it's a lot easier to build a company with that kind of new setup in mind, instead of converting a traditional company into a new business model. So we don't have that kind of legacy.
We look at Asia and it's busy from Thailand to Vietnam to Indonesia. You see the green bikes all over the place, and so it is of course a interesting but also very, to use your word earlier, perfect market for it. What are we looking at in terms of benchmarking and looking at other countries that are already in this space that have taken it forward a notch? Are we seeing it in other countries in the West?
Yeah, even here in Southeast Asia you see it. So the EV bike adoption is quite high in markets like Indonesia, Vietnam. If you look at Europe, there's quite a number of kind of sustainable delivery solutions. But there, for example, the Netherlands, they have bikes. So there's people using just a normal bike, they pedaling. You cannot do that in Kuala Lumpur, where it's hot, there are hills, it's a very spread area. So it's almost impossible, exactly. Right. It's from a safety point of view. So it's about certain models work in certain markets, and each market will need to adapt to what works best there.
Now, when we look at Malaysia and her infrastructure, what are the opportunities to integrate with other rail systems or perhaps other points of contact there?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. So if you look at, for example, Klang Valley alone, there's several operators. So we have the LRT network, we have the MRT network, there's KTM and the KLIA Express. So all those operators, they have connecting stations which provide opportunities to transfer from one line to another, so you can connect those. Similarly with the cities, they're always connected because all the public transport networks have been designed around commuters. And so there's demand for it, and it's always from city to city and connecting the different neighborhoods. So we're just following what's already there. And where the consumers are, that's where the packages need to go to as well. What
is left to do, or what more can be done in this space?
A lot of things. So I think if you look at from a consumer point of view, what I mentioned before is that if consumers are given choice, they would prefer sustainability. So I think from a business point of view, we should allow consumers to choose between a traditional or sustainable delivery solution at the checkout. So when they have their shopping cart and they want to click buy, give that choice to consumers. Because once there's demand, the rest will follow. The industry will follow, the regulators will follow. So that's the key thing. Similarly, infrastructure-wise, Malaysia, there are more and more EV vehicles coming, so it's very focused on the consumer market. But from an industry perspective, we're lagging quite a bit compared to other markets. So there could definitely be more push to increase the adoption, because the more sustainable alternatives there are, the easier it is to move packages like that.
And where can we begin to get that rolling in terms of giving more push? Who should be the stakeholders here that are really incentivizing for this push?
It's really a private, like a private-public partnership, in the sense that the industry needs to push from a demand point of view, and from a regulatory point of view, there can also be incentives to increase adoption. We can't really force people to become green, but you can give the necessary financial incentives. So some markets have used carbon tax for that purpose. Other markets have a more voluntary approach, but that will help companies to find a more sustainable solution once there's a financial incentive driven towards that.
I'll go back to the fact that Malaysia targets net zero greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2050. All sectors need to stand up, step up and contribute in an equal way if possible. Where do you think Malaysia stands with this agenda, and how progressive are we, or how aggressive are we as a nation?
It's similar, yeah, to what I mentioned before in terms of the transparency is there. The next step is to translate it to ringgit, so in terms of what is the financial benefit. There have been many studies where it shows that saving on carbon emissions has a financial, like a positive financial impact on companies. It's just that most companies are not aware of that. They don't know how to calculate it. They don't have that transparency themselves. So us as a logistics industry, we can already help by providing that transparency so companies can act on that. And then the government can obviously help with that as well in terms of certain incentives, regulatory frameworks to allow for that.
Well, ONNO, if you could leave us today with one simple message about the future of sustainability, what would that be?
So what we're quite excited about, so we started a year ago, we started here in Malaysia. It was a new concept, and we're quite happy that we were able to reach the 70% emission savings. Now that we've proven that can be done, we're scaling up in Malaysia, but the next step is to go to other markets as well. And what we want to do is put Malaysia as a market leader, a thought leader in this sustainable mobility solution.
Why did you start with Malaysia first?
Definitely.
Yeah, no, but in terms of being here, why Malaysia?
Why Malaysia? If you look at Malaysia as a market, it's a market that really wants to innovate. If you look at the adoption of new technology, if you look at the regulatory framework, there's a lot more appetite to do things differently. Similarly, the e-commerce is booming, so it's an ideal market for us to expand.
Well, thank you, ONNO, for speaking to us, and it has been interesting. Now, Malaysia's green future is more than just cutting carbon. It's also about innovation and opportunity and a sustainable path that strengthens both the economy and the environment. And these efforts will be central to the nation's growth in the years ahead. I'm Jessy Chahal. Thanks for watching, and be sure to follow us for more conversations on issues that matter. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.